the weight pressing down on his chest. Across the aisle, Clara sat with her hands folded in her lap, her posture calm. But her eyes held a quiet devastation he hadn't seen before. She didn't look at him. She looked straight ahead, toward the bench, as if bracing herself. "Mr. Moretti," the judge began, voice measured but firm. "Your petition requests sole legal and physical custody of your children, citing concerns about their emotional stability in their mother's care. Can you elaborate on these concerns?" Arthur swallowed, throat dry. He stood slowly, adjusting his cufflinks, a nervous habit he'd never admitted to anyone. When he spoke, his voice was steady, practiced, the tone of a man used to commanding boardrooms. But beneath it, something trembled. "Your Honor," he began, "I love my children more than anything in this world. More than my company, more than my name." He paused, glancing toward the small gallery where his teenage son, Leo, sat stiffly beside his younger sister, Sophia. Leo avoided his gaze. Sophia stared at her shoes. That look, of disappointment, not anger, cut deeper than any accusation. "For years," Arthur continued, forcing strength into his words, "I've provided everything they could ever need. Private schools, tutors, travel, security. But lately," his voice faltered for just a second, "lately, I've realized that material things aren't enough. They need consistency. Structure. A home where decisions are made with long-term vision, not just emotion." Clara finally turned her head. Her eyes met his, not with fury, but with a sorrow so profound it made his stomach twist. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. In that silent look was everything. The missed birthdays, the late-night calls unanswered, the dinners eaten alone while he closed billion-dollar deals in Tokyo or Zurich. "You claim instability," the judge said, flipping through papers. "Yet Ms. Moretti has maintained the family home, enrolled the children in consistent therapy since your separation, and ensured they've kept up with school and extracurriculars. What specific incidents concern you?" Arthur hesitated. His lawyer had coached him. Stick to the script, emphasize discipline, future opportunities, the international boarding school he'd already reserved spots for. But now, under the judge's scrutiny and Clara's unwavering gaze, the words felt hollow. I worry they're being influenced by unresolved feelings," he said carefully. "By bitterness. I want them to see the bigger picture, to understand that sometimes hard choices are made for their benefit." Clara exhaled softly, almost imperceptibly. It was the sound of someone who'd heard the same justification too many times. Then, from the back row, Sophia whispered, so quietly only those nearby could hear, "He doesn't even know I hate piano." Leo put a protective arm around her shoulders. No one else seemed to notice. But Arthur did. And in that moment, the polished facade cracked. Because he didn't know. He'd signed the check for lessons every month, praised her recitals from photos sent by staff, but never once asked if she enjoyed it. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Moretti, are you saying your wife is deliberately poisoning your children against you?" "No." The word came out sharper than intended. He softened it quickly. "No, Your Honor. I'm trying to be the father they deserve, even if I haven't always been." A heavy silence settled over the room. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, fading fast. Inside, time stretched thin. Then Clara spoke for the first time, her voice clear, calm, but laced with steel. "Your Honor, may I respond?" The judge nodded. Clara rose. She didn't look at Arthur. She looked only at the bench, her hands still clasped, but her shoulders straighter now. "My husband built an empire," she said, "but he forgot to build a home. He confuses presence with provision. Love isn't a trust fund, Your Honor. It's showing up. It's knowing your daughter hates piano. It's being there when your son fails his first math test, not sending a tutor, but sitting with him until he understands." Arthur flinched as if struck. "And now," Clara continued, her voice dropping just enough to carry weight, "he wants to take them away, not because I'm unfit, but because he suddenly realized what he's lost. And he thinks money can buy it back." Arthur opened his mouth to protest, but no words came, because part of him knew she was right. The judge studied them both, then glanced at the clock. "We'll recess for 15 minutes. Counselors approached the bench. As the gavel tapped, Arthur remained standing, frozen. Around him, people moved. Lawyers conferred, clerks shuffled papers. But he saw only Clara walking past him without a glance, her heels clicking like a countdown. And in that sterile courtroom, surrounded by power and procedure, Arthur Moretti felt utterly, terrifyingly alone. He had come to win. But for the first time, he wondered what victory would truly cost. and whether, in trying to reclaim his breath that trembled at the edges. Her hands, still steady in court, now shook slightly at her sides. She tucked them into the pockets of her tailored blazer, fingers brushing the smooth surface of her phone. A text notification glowed faintly. "Mom, are we going home after this?" It was from Sophia. Simple. Innocent. Heartbreaking. Before she could reply, soft footsteps approached. She opened her eyes to see Leo standing a few feet away. Arms crossed, jaw tight. At 16, he already carried himself like someone who'd seen too much too soon. "He didn't even know about the piano," Leo said quietly, voice rough with something between anger and grief. "He paid for it for 3 years and never once asked if she liked it." Clara pushed off the wall and walked toward him, stopping just close enough to touch, but not quite. "He's trying, Leo," she said, though the words tasted bitter even as she spoke them. "Trying?" Leo let out a short, humorless laugh. "Trying is showing up when your kid breaks their arm, not sending your assistant with flowers. Trying is remembering birthdays without a calendar alert." Clara reached out then, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. He didn't pull away, but he didn't lean in either. "I know," she whispered, "and I'm so sorry you've had to carry that disappointment for so long." Leo looked down the hall toward the courtroom door, his expression unreadable. "Why is he doing this now? Why fight for us like we're assets to reclaim?" Clara hesitated. She wanted to shield him, to say it was love, pure and simple. But lies had built too many walls in their family already. "I think," she said carefully, "he's realizing what he's lost. And maybe he's afraid it's too late to fix it." Before Leo could respond, a familiar voice cut through the corridor. "Clara." She turned. Arthur stood at the end of the hallway alone, his lawyer nowhere in sight. His tie was slightly loosened, his usually immaculate hair tousled. He looked less like a titan of industry and more like a man unraveling. "I need to talk to you," he said, voice low. Clara exchanged a glance with Leo, who gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before stepping back toward the waiting area. She stayed where she was. Arthur approached slowly, stopping an arm's length away. For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them hummed with years of unspoken things. "You were right in there," he finally said, not meeting her eyes. "About the piano. About everything." Clara didn't soften. "Not yet. Then why are you still fighting me in court, Arthur? If you truly see it, if you really understand, why drag our children through this?" He flinched. "Because I thought if I could just get them full time, I could make it right. Build something new. Show them I've changed." "And what about what they need now?" she countered, voice rising just enough to carry urgency. "They don't need a grand gesture. They need you to listen, to be present without an agenda. You can't custody your way into their trust." Arthur finally looked at her, his eyes raw. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted, the words barely above a whisper. "Every time I try to reach out, it feels like I'm speaking a language they've forgotten how to understand." Clara studied him, the exhaustion beneath the pride, the fear beneath the control. This wasn't the man who'd coldly signed separation papers 6 months ago. This was someone waking up, disoriented, in the ruins of his own making. "Then stop trying to win," she said softly. "Start trying to stay. Even when it's hard. Even when they push you away. Especially then." A silence stretched between them, fragile but charged with possibility. Then, from inside the courtroom, a clerk called out, "Party's back on the record." Arthur nodded once, sharply, as if sealing a promise to himself. "I'll do better," he said. Clara didn't smile, didn't forgive, but she gave the smallest nod in return. "Prove it," as they walked back toward the courtroom doors side by side. Not touching, not speaking, but no longer enemies. Sophia peeked out from behind a potted plant near the bench, eyes wide. When she saw her parents walking together, however briefly, however strained, a flicker of hope crossed her face. But just as they re-entered the chamber, Clara's phone buzzed again. A different notification this time. An encrypted email from a private investigator she'd hired weeks ago, after finding a receipt for a luxury OB/GYN clinic in Arthur's coat pocket. The subject line read, "Confirmation attached." Her blood ran cold. She didn't open it. Not here. Not now. But the weight of it settled in her chest like stone. Because if what she suspected was true, if Arthur's change of heart coincided with another woman carrying his child, then this custody battle wasn't just about regret. It was about timing. And secrets. And the terrifying realization that the man standing beside her might be fighting not to rebuild a family, but to bury a truth before it surfaced. The judge called the session back to order. Arthur took his seat, posture straightening, resolve hardening. Clara sat beside her attorney, fingers gripping the edge of the table, the unopened email burning a hole in her mind. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Arthur, unaware, leaned slightly toward his attorney, murmuring something about revising his testimony. He seemed focused, even determined, but Clara knew better now. She'd spent 15 years learning to read the silence between his words, the way his eyes flickered when he was withholding something. And lately, that flicker had grown more frequent. "Ms. Moretti," the judge said, turning to her, "your counsel indicated you have additional evidence regarding Mr. Moretti's current living arrangements and personal conduct. Is that correct?" Clara's attorney nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to introduce documentation that may bear on Mr. Moretti's claim of emotional availability and stability." Arthur stiffened. "Objection," he said, quickly, before his lawyer could stop him. "This is irrelevant. My personal life has no bearing on my ability to parent." The judge raised an eyebrow. "That depends on what your personal life entails, Mr. Moretti. Proceed, counsel." Clara didn't look at Arthur. She kept her gaze fixed on the bench, but her voice, when she spoke, carried a quiet intensity that filled the room. "Your Honor, I'm not here to expose private matters out of spite, but when someone claims they're ready to be a full-time parent, when they ask to remove children from the only stable home they've ever known, they must be held to the truth." She paused, then reached into her bag and placed a single envelope on the table. "Not the email. Not yet. Something older. This is a timeline," she said, "of the last 2 years. Every time our children needed their father, and where he actually was." She handed it to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. Inside were flight records, hotel receipts, calendar entries, all cross-referenced with missed school events, hospital visits, and birthdays. One page stood out, the date of Leo's appendectomy. Arthur had been in Dubai closing a merger. He'd sent a video message 3 days later. Arthur stared at the documents as if seeing them for the first time. I thought I was doing what was best," he said, voice strained. "Building security for them." "Security doesn't hug you when you're scared," Sophia whispered from the gallery, so softly only Leo heard. He squeezed her hand tighter. The judge flipped through the pages slowly, then looked up. "Mr. Moretti, do you dispute any of this?" "No," Arthur admitted, shoulders slumping. "But I've changed. I'm here now." "Are you?" Clara finally turned to him, her eyes glistening but dry. "Because last Tuesday, you told Leo you'd come to his robotics showcase. You promised. And when he looked up from the stage, you weren't there." Again, Arthur opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no excuse. No polished corporate deflection would work here, in this room where love wasn't measured in quarterly returns. "I got caught in a meeting," he said weakly. "A meeting?" Clara's voice cracked just once. "Or were you somewhere else entirely?" A beat of silence. Too long. Arthur's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, this line of questioning borders on harassment." But the judge held up a hand. "Let her speak." Clara took a breath. She hadn't planned to go this far, not yet. But the weight of the unopened email pressed against her ribs like a second heartbeat. If she didn't act now, she might lose the chance forever. 3 months ago," she said, voice low but clear, "you started spending weekends at the lake house. Alone, you said. But your car service logs show regular pickups for 2 passengers. And your credit card shows dinner reservations, for 2, at places miles from that house." Arthur paled. "Clara, please. Who is she, Arthur?" The question hung in the air, sharp as glass. He didn't answer. Couldn't. From the gallery, Leo stood abruptly. "Is that why you want us now?" he asked, voice shaking with betrayal. "Because you're starting over, with someone else, and you need us to look like part of the picture?" Arthur turned to his son, eyes wide with panic. "No, Leo, it's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Sophia cried, tears spilling over. "Because it feels like we're just leftovers." The courtroom fell utterly still. Even the rain seemed to hush. Arthur looked from his daughter's tear-streaked face to Clara's unwavering stare, and something inside him broke. Not dramatically, no shouting, no collapse, but quietly, like a foundation settling after years of strain. "I never meant for you to feel that way," he said, voice raw. "Not for a second." "But we did," Clara said gently. "And that's the truth you've been avoiding." The judge cleared his throat. "Given these new developments, I'm inclined to order a full psychological evaluation of both parents and the children, as well as a temporary suspension of any unilateral custody requests. Arthur didn't protest. He simply nodded, defeated. As the gavel fell, signaling another recess, Clara rose to leave, but Arthur caught her wrist, lightly, desperately. "Let me explain," he pleaded, voice barely audible. She looked down at his hand, then back into his eyes. "You've had years to explain, Arthur. Now you have to show." She pulled away and walked toward her children, who rushed to meet her. Leo wrapped an arm around Sophia. Sophia buried her face in Clara's coat. Behind them, Arthur stood alone in the center of the courtroom, the rain streaking the windows like tears. "Please call me. It's urgent." He didn't move. Couldn't. Because for the first time, he wasn't thinking about damage control or public image, or even his own guilt. He was thinking about Sophia's voice, so small, so shattered, when she'd asked if they were just leftovers. His lawyer approached, briefcase in hand, expression tight. "Arthur, we need to strategize. That timeline she presented, it's damning. And if she's digging into your personal life..." "She's not digging," Arthur interrupted, voice hollow. "She's just finally seeing clearly." His lawyer blinked. "Look, I get it. Emotions are high. But this is still a legal battle. If she brings up Elena..." "Don't say her name here," Arthur snapped, glancing toward the doorway where Clara and the kids had disappeared. "Not where they might hear." The lawyer lowered his voice. "Then you need to cut ties. Cleanly. Before it becomes evidence." Arthur turned sharply. "You think this is about strategy? This is about my children. They think I'm replacing them. Are you?" The question hung between them, blunt and brutal. Arthur didn't answer, because the truth was tangled. He hadn't planned for any of this. Elena had started as a colleague, brilliant, driven, someone who understood the pressure of his world. Their connection had grown slowly, quietly, during late nights finalizing acquisitions, shared exhaustion over champagne in hotel suites. He'd told himself it meant nothing, that it was just companionship, relief. But then came the missed calls from home. The excuses, the slow erosion of presence, and now a pregnancy. He closed his eyes. He hadn't even processed it himself. Elena had told him 2 days ago, voice trembling with something between joy and fear. He'd mumbled congratulations, promised to talk soon, then buried himself in work. Because facing it meant facing what it said about him. The man who claimed to want his family back while building another one in the shadows. Back in the hallway, Clara sat with Leo and Sophia in a quiet alcove near the courthouse cafe. Sophia clutched a paper cup of hot chocolate, untouched. Leo stared out the rain-streaked window. "He looked scared," Leo said quietly. Clara nodded. "He should be. But not because we're mad," Sophia added, voice small. "Because he knows he messed up." Clara reached for her daughter's hand. "People can change, sweetheart. But they have to want to. And they have to prove it, not with words, but with time." Just then, her phone lit up. The investigator's email. She'd avoided it long enough. With a deep breath, she opened it. Attached was a medical confirmation. Patient, Elena Voss. Gestational age, 10 weeks. Fetal heartbeat detected. Below it, a second document. A signed affidavit from Elena's OB/GYN confirming Arthur Moretti as the listed partner on intake forms. Clara's stomach dropped. 10 weeks. That meant conception happened before the separation papers were even filed. While Arthur was still sleeping in their bed. While she was planning their 20th anniversary dinner. She closed her eyes, fighting the wave of nausea. Not just betrayal, but the cruel irony of it all. He'd come to court claiming moral authority, demanding sole custody, while carrying this secret like a time bomb. "Mom!" Sophia touched her arm. "You okay?" Clara forced a smile, tucking the phone away. "I'm fine, baby." But inside, something hardened. Later that evening, after tucking the kids into bed at the townhouse they'd called home for 12 years, Clara sat alone in the dim kitchen. Rain tapped against the windows. She poured a single glass of wine, something she rarely did, and stared at the unlit fireplace. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something, instinct, dread, curiosity, made her swipe. "Clara," a woman's voice. Young. Nervous. "Yes. It's Elena. Elena Voss." A pause. "I know I shouldn't be calling, but I needed to hear your voice." Clara went very still. "Why?" "Because I saw the court filings online, and I heard what your daughter said today." Her voice cracked. "I never wanted to hurt your children. I swear." Clara didn't speak. She waited. "I didn't know he was fighting for full custody," Elena continued, voice trembling. He told me he was trying to stabilize things before telling you about the baby. But now I see, he's using this pregnancy as leverage. Or worse, he's trying to erase it. Clara's grip tightened on the glass. Is that what you think? I know, Elena whispered. Because today, he asked me to delay prenatal appointments. To keep things quiet until after the custody ruling. Silence stretched between them. Two women bound by one man's choices. Why tell me this? Clara finally asked. Because I may be carrying his child, Elena said. But I won't be part of taking yours away. Clara closed her eyes. In that moment, she didn't feel anger toward Elena. Only sorrow for them all. Thank you, she said softly. She ended the call and sat in the dark a long time. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside, Clara made a decision. Tomorrow, in court, she wouldn't just defend her right to parent. She would expose the truth, not to destroy Arthur, but to force him to face it. Because children deserve more than half-truths wrapped in expensive suits. They deserve honesty. Devastation, the way she'd looked at him like he was already gone. And beneath that guilt, a colder fear, Elena's call last night. She'd left a voicemail, voice tight with hurt. If you're going to pretend I don't exist for your court case, then maybe I should let someone else tell your wife the truth. He deleted it, but the words clung to him like smoke. Inside courtroom 4, Clara was already seated, back straight, hands folded. She didn't look at him, but her presence felt heavier today, calmer, yet charged with something unspoken. Leo and Sophia sat in the front row of the gallery, flanked by Clara's sister. They didn't wave, didn't smile, just watched. The judge entered promptly at 9. Counselors, he said without preamble. I've reviewed the motion filed late last night by Ms. Moretti's team. You're requesting to introduce new evidence regarding Mr. Moretti's undisclosed personal relationship and potential paternity of a third child. Is that accurate? Arthur's lawyer shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is a blatant attempt to smear my client's character. Personal relationships outside of marriage are irrelevant to parental fitness, especially when no misconduct has occurred. Clara's attorney stood calmly. With respect, Your Honor, it's not the relationship itself that's relevant. It's the timing, the concealment, and the direct contradiction between Mr. Moretti's courtroom claims of emotional recommitment to his family and his simultaneous creation of a new one. Arthur's stomach twisted. He turned slightly in his chair, finally meeting Clara's eyes. There was no rage in them, no theatrics, only a deep, quiet sorrow and resolve. Ms. Moretti, the judge said, what exactly are you alleging? Clara rose. Her voice was steady, clear, carrying the weight of sleepless nights and shattered trust. I'm not alleging infidelity, Your Honor. That ship sailed long ago. What I'm presenting is evidence that while my husband stood before this court claiming he wanted sole custody to protect our children and rebuild our family, he was simultaneously preparing to become a father again, with another woman. A murmur rippled through the small gallery. Leo stiffened. Sophia covered her mouth with her hand. Arthur stood abruptly. Clara, please, this isn't the place. The place for truth? She cut in, turning to him fully now. Where else should it be told, Arthur? At another missed birthday? Over another video call from some luxury suite while our daughter cries herself to sleep wondering why she's not enough. Her voice broke on the last word, but she held it together, chin high. I have medical documentation, she continued, addressing the judge, confirming that Elena Voss is 10 weeks pregnant and that Mr. Moretti is listed as the partner on her prenatal intake forms. Conception occurred while we were still legally married, while he was telling me he just needed space, while he was already planning to ask for full custody. She placed a sealed envelope on the clerk's desk. This includes the affidavit from her physician and a timeline cross-referencing his travel records with her appointments. Arthur's lawyer sputtered. This is hearsay. We haven't had time to review. The defense has known about this relationship for weeks, Clara said coolly. They just hoped I wouldn't find out before the ruling. Arthur sank back into his chair, stunned. He hadn't expected her to move so fast. So precisely. The judge studied Clara, then Arthur. Mr. Moretti, is any of this true? Silence stretched. The rain had stopped, but the air still felt heavy, suffocating. Arthur looked at his children. Leo's expression was stone. Sophia wouldn't even look at him. And in that moment, he realized, winning custody wouldn't bring them back. Not if they saw him as a man who built new families while abandoning the old one. Yes, he said quietly. It's true. Gasps echoed softly in the room. But it's not what you think, he he added quickly, turning to Clara. I never meant to hide it forever. I was trying to figure out how to handle it without hurting anyone. Without hurting who, Arthur? Clara asked, voice trembling now. Because you've already hurt us. All of us. He had no answer. The judge leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Mr. Moretti, you came before this court asking for sole custody based on your renewed commitment to your children. Yet you concealed a pregnancy that directly impacts their future. A sibling they may or may not ever know, a division of your time and emotional resources you never disclosed. That's not just omission. It's deception. Arthur bowed his head. I was afraid, he admitted, voice raw. Afraid that if I told the truth, I'd lose them completely. You were never going to lose them, Clara said softly. But you might lose their trust forever if you keep treating love like a transaction. The judge exhaled slowly. Given these revelations, I am ordering an immediate suspension of all custody proceedings pending a full family evaluation by a court-appointed psychologist. Additionally, both parties are mandated to attend co-parenting counseling, not to negotiate schedules, but to rebuild honesty. He looked directly at Arthur. You cannot claim to want your children back while living a double life, Mr. Moretti. Fatherhood isn't a title you reclaim through legal force. It's a daily choice to show up, fully, truthfully, and without conditions. Arthur didn't argue. He simply nodded, tears welling but not falling. As the gavel fell, Clara gathered her things. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk. She just walked past him, pausing for only a second. When you're ready to be honest, not just with the court, but with yourself, let me know, she said quietly. Until then, I'll be home. With our children. She left. Arthur remained seated, alone at the table, the envelope of evidence lying between verdict more damning than any judge could deliver. His phone buzzed again. Elena. He ignored it. Instead, he pulled out his own phone and scrolled back. Past board meeting notes, investor calls, flight confirmations, until he found what he was looking for, photos. Sophia's first ballet recital. Leo's science fair trophy. Family beach trip 2 summers ago. All of them laughing under a wide blue sky, Clara's head resting on his shoulder. He'd been present that day. Truly present. And yet, even then, he'd checked his email 3 times during lunch. He closed the gallery with a shaky breath. Outside, he heard voices. Clara's. Low, soothing. He rose quietly and stepped toward the doorway, not to intrude, but to listen. He's scared, Clara was saying. But fear doesn't excuse silence. It feels like he's choosing someone else, Leo said, voice tight. Again. He might be, Clara admitted. But that doesn't mean we stop being who we are. We stay kind. We stay honest. And we protect our hearts without closing them completely. Sophia's small voice followed. Do you think he'll ever really come back? Clara paused. I don't know, sweetheart. But if he does, it won't be because he won a court case. It'll be because he chose us. Every single day. Even when it's hard. Arthur leaned against the doorframe, unseen. The words settled into his bones like truth he could no longer outrun. Back in the hallway, his lawyer approached, tie loosened, expression grim. We're in damage control mode now. If she files a motion for sole custody based on emotional abandonment and concealment, the judge will likely grant it, especially with that pregnancy timeline. Arthur didn't look at him. Then let her have it. The lawyer blinked. What? If she wants sole custody, Arthur said, voice quiet but firm. I won't fight her. You can't be serious. Your reputation, your legacy. My legacy is sitting 10 feet away wondering if she's worth loving, Arthur cut in, finally turning, eyes blazing with something raw and real. And I've spent years proving she isn't. That ends today. He walked past his stunned attorney and toward the family alcove. Clara saw him coming. She didn't move. Didn't shield the kids. She just watched, wary but open. Arthur stopped a few feet away. He didn't look at Leo or Sophia right away. He looked at Clara. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said, voice rough. I'm not even asking for another chance. But I need you to know I see it now. I see what I've done. What I've almost lost. Sophia peeked out from behind her mother's arm. Her eyes were red-rimmed but curious. Arthur knelt slowly. Not for effect, but because standing felt too much like performing. He met her gaze. I'm going to be a father to another child, he said, the words tasting like ash. And that's my fault. My choice. But that doesn't mean I get to walk away from you. Not unless you tell me to. Leo crossed his arms. Why should we believe you this time? Because I'm not promising anything, Arthur said. I'm just staying. Even if you don't talk to me. Even if you're angry. I'll be at your games. At parent-teacher conferences. At dinner, if you'll let me sit at the table. Not because I deserve it. Because you deserve a father who tries. Silence. Then Sophia took a tiny step forward. Will you come to my piano recital next month? Even though I hate it. Arthur's throat tightened. Only if you want me there. And if you ever want to quit piano, I'll be the first to call the teacher. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Leo didn't smile, but he uncrossed his arms. You missed robotics. Regionals are in 3 weeks. I'll be there, Arthur said simply. Front row. Clara watched them, tears glistening but unshed. She didn't speak. But she gave the smallest nod, acknowledgement, not absolution. Just then, Arthur's phone rang again. Elena's name flashed on the screen. He looked at it. Then, slowly, in front of his family, he pressed answer and put it on speaker. Elena, he said, voice steady. I need to talk to you. In person. And I need you to meet someone. Clara's eyes widened slightly. Who? Elena asked, cautious. My children, Arthur said. Because if you're carrying my child, they're your child's siblings. And they deserve to know the truth from me. Not from court documents. A long pause. Then, softly. Okay. Arthur ended the call and looked at Clara. I won't hide anymore. Not from you. Not from them. Not from myself. Clara studied him for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and handed him a folded sheet of paper. This is the psychologist's number. The one the judge appointed. Call her. Tell her everything. And if you're serious about showing up, start there. He took the paper like it was sacred. As they walked out of the courthouse together, not as a couple, not yet as a family, but as people trying to find their way back to something real. The sun broke fully through the clouds, casting long, hopeful shadows on the wet pavement. School, not as a grand gesture, but as a practical step. Proximity without intrusion. He called the court-appointed psychologist, Dr. Lin, and scheduled a session for himself first. I need to understand, he told her over the phone, how I became the kind of man who fights for his children in court while hiding another one in the shadows. Meanwhile, Clara watched from a distance. She didn't soften, not yet, but she stopped bracing for betrayal. She noticed the small things. Arthur waiting outside Leo's robotics lab at 5 p.m., not entering unless invited, sending Sophia a single text on Tuesday. How was piano? And accepting her one-word reply, fine, without pushing for more. But the real test came on a rainy Thursday evening. Clara was sorting laundry when her phone buzzed, an alert from the home security system. Motion detected in the driveway. She tensed, expecting a delivery or a neighbor. But the camera feed showed Arthur standing under the porch light, soaked, holding a paper bag. He wasn't at the door. He stood several feet back, as if afraid to cross an invisible line. She opened the door slowly. He didn't step forward. I know it's late, he said, voice low. But I found this cleaning out my office. He held out the bag. Inside was a framed photo. The beach trip, the one he'd looked at in the courthouse. The glass was cracked, but the image was intact. I thought maybe they'd want it. Clara took the bag. Their fingers didn't touch. They're asleep. I know. He shifted, water dripping from his coat. I just needed you. To know I'm trying to return what I broke. Not replace it. Not fix it overnight. Just return it. She studied his face, the exhaustion, the humility, the absence of performance. Why now, Arthur? Why not 6 months ago? A year? He looked down at his hands. Because I thought love was something you provided. A house. A trust fund. Security. I didn't realize it was something you do. Every day. Even when no one's watching. Even when it costs you everything. A silence settled between them, softer than before. Then, from the hallway, a small voice. Dad? Sophia stood in her pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit, eyes wide. Arthur turned, startled. Hey, Bug, he said, voice instantly gentler. She walked toward the door, stopping beside Clara. Did you bring the picture? He nodded. The one from Cape Cod. When you buried me in sand and Leo poured seawater down my shirt. A tiny smile tugged at her lips. You yelled. I did. He crouched slightly, still on the porch, still respecting the threshold. I'm sorry I missed so many things after that. Sophia glanced at Clara, then back at him. Mom says you're going to be a dad again. Arthur's breath caught. He didn't look away. Yes. Is that why you wanted us before? She asked, voice trembling. Because you were scared you'd mess up with the new baby too? The question struck like lightning. Arthur swallowed hard. No, sweetheart. I wanted you because I realized I couldn't live without you. And yes, I'm terrified I'll mess up again. With all of you. But I'd rather try and fail than never try at all. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. She stepped forward, just one step, onto the porch. Clara didn't stop her. Then Leo appeared behind his sister, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You really met with her? The other woman? Arthur nodded. Yesterday. Her name is Elena. She's kind. And she's scared too. Of what? That our family will hate her child. That your baby sibling will grow up feeling like a secret. Leo frowned. We wouldn't do that. I know, Arthur said softly. But I almost made it true. Rain fell steadily around them, but under the porch light, the air felt warmer. Sophia reached out and took the photo from Clara's hands. Can we hang it back up? Clara looked at Arthur, then at her daughter. If you want to. That night, for the first time in months, Arthur didn't leave immediately. He sat on the porch steps while Clara made hot chocolate inside. Leo brought him a mug, no words, just a nod. Sophia sat beside him, shoulder barely touching his arm, as they looked at the photo together. But later, alone in his apartment, Arthur opened his laptop. He hadn't told Clara everything. There was one detail he'd withheld, not out of deception, but shame. Elena had shown him an ultrasound image. 10 weeks. Strong heartbeat. And something else. The preliminary genetic screening had flagged a rare chromosomal marker, one that ran in his family. His late mother had carried it. It meant nothing definitive, but it required follow-up tests. Serious ones. He hadn't told Clara because he didn't want her to think he was using potential medical complications as leverage or pity. But as he stared at the scan, a deeper fear gripped him. What if this new child needed him in ways he wasn't ready for? And what if, in failing that child, he failed his older ones all over again? His phone rang. Elena, I got the results back from the expanded panel, she said, voice tight. They want us to come in for a detailed anatomy scan next week. And possibly amniocentesis. Arthur closed his eyes. Okay, there's more, she whispered. The marker, it's the same one your mother had. The one that led to your brother's condition. Arthur's breath stopped. His younger brother, Daniel, had died at age 4, from complications linked to that very syndrome. A loss that had shattered their family, that Arthur had buried under decades of work and silence. I don't know if I can do this, Elena said, voice breaking. Not alone. He was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, you won't be. Because in that instant, he understood. Fatherhood wasn't about choosing between children. It was about showing up for all of them, even when it terrified you, even when the past echoed in the future. And as he sat in the dark apartment, rain tapping the window, Arthur Moretti made a decision not as a billionaire, not as a litigant, but as a man finally learning how to love without conditions. Tomorrow, he would tell Clara everything. Light. He'd called first, asked permission, and to his surprise, she'd said yes. Now, he sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea he hadn't touched. Clara leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching him with quiet wariness. The children were at school. It was just them. The first time in months they'd been alone without lawyers, judges, or unspoken accusations hanging between them. You said you needed to talk, Clara said, voice measured. So talk. Arthur took a breath. He'd rehearsed this a dozen ways, in the shower, in the car, in the hollow silence of his apartment. But now, facing her, words felt too small for the weight of what he carried. It's not just about Elena being pregnant, he began, voice low. There's something else. Clara's expression didn't change, but her posture tightened slightly. Go on. He reached into his coat and placed a folded medical report on the table. Not the full file, just the summary page, highlighted in yellow. They ran genetic screening. Routine, they said. But there's a marker. A rare chromosomal variation. Clara stepped closer, eyes scanning the page. She wasn't a doctor, but she'd spent years navigating pediatric specialists when Leo had chronic asthma as a child. She knew enough. This runs in your family? She asked slowly. Arthur nodded, throat tight. My brother Daniel. He had it. It caused severe developmental delays, heart defects. He didn't make it past 4. Silence filled the kitchen, thick and heavy. Clara looked up, her eyes searching his. And you're telling me this why? Because I should have told you the moment I knew, he said, voice breaking. Not because I want sympathy. Not because I'm trying to justify anything. But because if this child needs special care, if they face the same battles Daniel did, Then your children might one day be caregivers, advocates, siblings in a way that demands more than just love. It demands preparation. Truth. He looked down at his hands. I kept it from you because I was ashamed. Ashamed that my blood carries this shadow. And terrified that if you knew, you'd think I was dragging your kids into a future they didn't sign up for. Clara was quiet for a long time. Then she walked to the table and sat across from him. Do you remember when Leo was 6, and he had that allergic reaction at soccer camp? Arthur nodded. I was in Singapore. You handled everything. I did, she said softly. But do you know what I told him in the ambulance? When he was scared and asking if he was broken. I told him, your body works differently, but that doesn't make you less. It just means we learn how to protect you together. She leaned forward, eyes glistening. Family isn't about perfect health or perfect choices, Arthur. It's about showing up when things get hard. Even when you're scared. Especially then. He looked at her, stunned. You're not angry? I'm furious, she admitted, voice trembling. That you waited. That you thought I'd turn away from a child, yours or mine, because of a diagnosis. But I'm also relieved. Relieved? Because this, she tapped the medical sheet, isn't a secret you're hiding anymore. It's something we can face. If you let us. Arthur's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. I don't know how to do this, Clara. I froze when Daniel got sick. I buried myself in work after he died. I swore I'd never let anyone I loved be that vulnerable again. And yet here you are, she said gently. Vulnerable. Afraid. And still choosing to tell the truth. Outside, a bird sang, a clear, bright note cutting through the tension. Then Clara did something unexpected. She reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Just for a second. But it was enough. We'll figure it out, she said. Not as husband and wife, but as parents. All of us. Before Arthur could respond, her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Dr. Lin, the court psychologist. Elena Voss contacted my office this morning. She'd like to join the next family session, if appropriate. Clara showed him the screen. Arthur exhaled slowly. She's scared too. She thinks you'll hate her. I don't hate her, Clara said. I pity her for falling for a man who didn't know how to love fully. But if she's willing to be honest, and if she's going to be part of our children's lives, then yes. She should be there. Arthur nodded, a new resolve settling in his chest. I'll call her. Tell her it's okay. As he stood to leave, Clara stopped him. Arthur. He turned. When you go to that appointment, take Leo with you. He blinked. What? He's old enough to understand, she said. And he deserves to know his father isn't running this time. He's standing still, facing it. Later that afternoon, Arthur picked Leo up from robotics club. The boy climbed into the passenger seat without a word. I have an appointment, Arthur said as he pulled onto the main road. At the maternal fetal medicine center. They're doing more tests on the baby. Leo stared out the window. Is something wrong? Maybe. Maybe not. But I need to be there. And I'd like you to come with me. If you want. Leo was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly. Did you go to all of Sophia's ultrasounds when Mom was pregnant with her? Arthur winced. No. I was closing the Tokyo merger. Leo nodded. Then yeah. I'll go. At the clinic, Elena sat in the waiting area, hands clasped tightly, eyes red-rimmed. When she saw Leo beside Arthur, she stood abruptly, startled. It's okay, Arthur said gently. He knows. Elena looked at Leo, then at Arthur, then back at Leo. Hi, she whispered. Leo gave a small nod. Hi. No hostility. No drama. Just two people meeting in the fragile space between past and future. When the nurse called their names, Arthur hesitated. Do you want him in the room? Leo answered before Elena could. I'll wait out here. But as Arthur and Elena disappeared down the hall, Leo didn't sit. He walked to the large window overlooking the hospital garden and watched the rain begin again, soft, steady cleansing. Inside the exam room, the ultrasound screen flickered to life. The technician pointed to the tiny form, the beating heart, the developing limbs. There's your baby, she said warmly. Arthur held Elena's hand, not as lovers, but as co-parents stepping into the unknown together. And for the first time, he didn't look away from the screen. Because this wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a life. Demonstration, clapping when no one else did. Waiting outside piano practice with 2 hot chocolates. One for Sophia, one for himself. Even when she barely spoke to him. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. The court had not yet ruled. The psychological evaluation loomed. And though Clara had softened in small ways, a nod in the hallway, allowing him to drive the kids home from soccer, she hadn't forgiven him. Not fully, and Arthur knew he didn't deserve it yet. Then came the day of the final pretrial hearing. Rain threatened again as they gathered in Dr. Lynn's sunlit office, now expanded to include Elena. She sat near the window, hands folded in her lap, wearing a simple dress, no makeup, her pregnancy just beginning to show. She'd been attending sessions for 2 weeks now, not as an intruder, but as someone trying to understand her place in this fractured constellation. Dr. Lynn began gently. Today, I'd like to talk about boundaries. Not walls, but bridges. How do we create a family structure where all children feel seen, safe, and valued? Clara spoke first. I need to know that if Arthur is with us, he's with us. Not checking his phone for updates from another life. Arthur looked at her. I've turned off notifications. I schedule calls with Elena during my alone time, never during visits. Elena nodded. We agreed. This isn't about replacing anyone. It's about adding. Leo, who rarely spoke in sessions, surprised them all by saying, What if the baby gets sick? Like really sick? Will you disappear again to deal with it? The room went still. Arthur didn't flinch. No, he said firmly. If that happens, I'll bring you both into it. You're his or her siblings. That doesn't change. Sophia looked up from her sketchbook. Will the baby live with you? Elena answered softly. Not at first. I have a small apartment. But your dad and I are talking about shared custody for the baby too. Just like with you. You mean we'll see the baby? Sophia asked, eyes wide. If you want to, Elena said. I'd like that. Dr. Lynn watched them carefully. This is progress. But legal custody is still pending. The judge will want assurance that emotional stability isn't compromised by divided loyalties. Later, as they left the building, Arthur walked Clara to her car. The sky darkened, thunder rumbling in the distance. They're going to give you full custody, he said quietly. And you should take it. Clara stopped. Why say that now? Because I finally understand what you've known all along, he said, voice rough with emotion. Love isn't claimed in courtrooms. It's built in kitchens, at bedtime, in the quiet moments no one sees. And I haven't earned that trust back yet. She studied him, the absence of ego, the raw honesty. You're different. I'm trying to be. A drop of rain landed on his shoulder. Then another. Clara opened her car door but didn't get in. There's a parent-teacher conference next Thursday. For Sophia's art class. She's terrified you'll make a scene like last year. Arthur winced. Last year, he'd shown up late in a tailored suit, interrupted the teacher to boast about funding the school's new wing, and embarrassed Sophia in front of her friends. I'll wear jeans, he said simply. And I'll sit in the back. And I won't say a word unless asked. Clara almost smiled. Almost. Just then, her phone buzzed. A notification from the courthouse portal. Final custody hearing, scheduled for Friday, 10 a.m. Her breath caught. Arthur saw it. It's time. That night, alone in his apartment, Arthur stared at the ultrasound photo Elena had given him. Taped to his fridge beside a drawing Sophia had slipped under his door last week. A stick-figure family holding hands under a rainbow. 4 figures. Not 3. Not 5. 4. Him, Clara, Leo, Sophia. No baby. Not yet. He understood. To them, the new child was still an abstraction, a possibility wrapped in fear and uncertainty. And until he proved he could love them without abandoning them for that possibility, he'd remain on the outside looking in. Friday morning arrived gray and heavy. The courthouse felt different this time, less like a battlefield, more like a threshold. As they entered courtroom 4, the judge greeted them without ceremony. I've reviewed Dr. Lynn's final recommendation, your updated parenting plans, and the children's private interviews. He paused, looking at each adult in turn. This case was never about who can provide more. It was about who is willing to sacrifice more for the sake of emotional truth. He turned to Arthur. Mr. Moretti, you came here demanding sole custody while concealing a pregnancy that directly impacts your children's future. That was a profound breach of trust. Arthur nodded. I know. But, the judge continued, your subsequent actions, transparency, participation in therapy, consistent presence without expectation, demonstrate genuine change. Not perfection, but effort. Then he looked at Clara. Ms. Moretti, you fought not to punish, but to protect. And you've shown remarkable grace in allowing space for reconciliation. He leaned forward. Therefore, I am granting joint legal and physical custody, with primary residence remaining with Ms. Moretti. Mr. Moretti will have scheduled visitation, including overnights, holidays, and summer blocks, as outlined in your mediated plan. Leo exhaled sharply. Sophia gripped Clara's hand. The judge's gaze settled on Arthur. But there's one condition. Before any changes to this arrangement are considered, you must complete 6 months of documented co-parenting compliance, including attendance at all medical, educational, and emotional milestones for both households. That includes the new child's care plan, should special needs arise. Arthur didn't hesitate. Yes, Your Honor. And Mr. Moretti? The judge's voice softened slightly. Don't confuse access with connection. You've been given a second chance. Don't treat it like a right. Treat it like a gift. As the gavel fell, sealing the decision, Arthur didn't celebrate. He turned to his children. Leo met his eyes first, then slowly extended his hand. Arthur took it, not a handshake, but a grip firm and real. Sophia stepped forward and hugged him, brief but wholehearted. Clara watched, tears in her eyes, but she didn't join them. Not yet. Outside, the storm finally broke, rain pouring down in cleansing sheets. Arthur stood under the courthouse awning, children beside him, water dripping from his hair, and for the first time in years, he didn't check his phone. He lingered in the doorway, unsure if he should stay or go. The custody order granted him visitation starting next week, but today felt suspended, a breath between verdict and reality. You don't have to leave yet, Clara said without turning around. He stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. I wasn't sure. She turned off the faucet and faced him, drying her hands on a towel. They're processing. So am I. Arthur nodded. He walked to the living room and picked up the framed photo from the mantel. The one he'd returned, now hanging again, glass replaced, crack gone. You fixed it. I didn't, she said, joining him. Sophia did. She glued it back together herself. Said broken things can still be beautiful if you care enough to put them back. He looked at her, heart aching. Do you believe that? I'm trying to. A silence settled, not uncomfortable, but full, like the space between notes in a song. Then, from the hallway, Leo appeared, holding his phone. His expression was unreadable. Elena just posted something. Arthur tensed. What? Leo showed him the screen. A simple photo. Elena sitting on a sunlit bench outside the maternal fetal clinic, one hand resting on her belly, the other holding a pamphlet titled Understanding Genetic Syndromes, a guide for parents. The caption read, Not alone anymore. No mention of Arthur. No drama. Just quiet courage. Clara leaned in to look. She's going public. She's scared, Arthur said softly. But she's choosing honesty too. Leo lowered the phone. She tagged the hospital's support group page. There's a meeting tomorrow night. For parents dealing with prenatal diagnoses. Arthur looked at Clara. I should go. You should, she agreed. But take Leo with you. Leo blinked. Me. You asked hard questions, Clara said gently. Now you get to see the answers lived out. That night, Arthur barely slept. He replayed every moment, the judge's words, Sophia's hug, Leo's tentative trust. And beneath it all, the gnawing fear. What if the baby needed surgeries? Therapies? Years of uncertainty? Could he handle it without retreating into work again? Could he be present for all his children, not just the ones who already knew his failures? The next evening, he picked up Leo in silence. The drive to the community center was quiet, rain threatening again. Inside, the room was warm, filled with soft voices and folding chairs arranged in a circle. Elena sat near the front, visibly nervous, clutching a notebook. When she saw them, relief washed over her face. Arthur didn't sit beside her. He sat with Leo 2 rows back. A facilitator began. Tonight, we share not to fix, but to witness. One by one, parents spoke about fear, guilt, hope. A mother described learning her twins had different conditions. A father talked about selling his business to afford therapy. Their stories weren't polished. They were raw, trembling, real. When it was Elena's turn, she stood slowly. I'm 10 weeks pregnant. The screening showed a marker linked to a rare syndrome, one that can affect heart development, cognition, mobility. We don't know the severity yet, but I spent weeks wondering if I could do this alone. She glanced at Arthur and Leo. Then I realized I don't have to, and neither does he. All eyes turned to them. Arthur's throat tightened. He didn't plan to speak. But then Leo nudged him. So he stood. I'm the father, he said, voice rough. And I've spent most of my life running from hard things, from grief, from vulnerability, from showing up when it mattered most. He looked at Leo. I failed my older kids. I missed birthdays, recitals, hospital visits. I thought providing money was enough. He paused, swallowing hard. But love isn't a transaction. It's showing up, even when you're scared, even when you don't know how. And if this baby needs more, I won't run. I'll learn. I'll stay. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. Leo stared at the floor, but his shoulders were less tense. After the meeting, as they walked to the car, Leo finally spoke. She's not trying to replace Mom. No, Arthur said. She's just trying to build something new with honesty. Leo nodded. Good. At home, Clara waited on the porch, wrapped in a light sweater. She didn't ask for details. She just looked at them, father and son, damp from the evening drizzle, standing closer than they had in years. You okay? She asked Leo. He shrugged, but there was warmth in it. Yeah, it was real. She smiled faintly, then turned to Arthur. You stayed. I did. For the first time, she stepped off the porch and stood in the driveway with him, under the streetlight. Rain began to fall again, soft, steady. You know, she said quietly, Daniel would have been 32 this year. Arthur froze. She'd never spoken his brother's name before. I looked him up, she continued. After you told me. He loved astronomy. Wanted to be an astronaut. Arthur's eyes filled. He built model rockets in our backyard. I used to help him launch them. Clara reached out, not to touch him, but to point to the sky. Look, through a break in the clouds, a single star glowed brightly. Arthur watched it, tears spilling silently down his cheeks. And in that quiet moment, under the rain and stars, the past didn't vanish. But it ended and sat through 3 hours of technical presentations without checking his phone once. He helped Sophia repaint her bedroom. Not the expensive decorator she'd suggested, but the soft sky blue she'd secretly wanted. And when she shyly asked if he'd hang the new shelves, he did, even though he hammered one in crooked. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. The amniocentesis results were due soon. And though Elena and Arthur had agreed to share everything openly, the waiting carved a hollow space inside him. A place where old fears whispered that he wasn't strong enough for what might come. One rainy Tuesday, Clara found him sitting alone on her porch steps, staring at his phone, face pale. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said, handing him a mug of tea. He didn't take it. The lab called. Results are ready. Her breath caught. And I haven't opened the email. His voice was barely above a whisper. What if it's confirmed? What if this child needs surgeries, therapies, years of care I don't know how to give? Clara sat beside him, not too close, but near enough. You're not the same man who ran from Daniel's illness, Arthur. I'm not sure I've changed enough. She turned to him, eyes steady. Then change with them. Not before. Not after. With. He looked at her, searching for reassurance, but she offered something better. Truth. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be there. Later that night, alone in his apartment, Arthur finally opened the email. The subject line, Prenatal Diagnostic Report, Final Results. His hands shook as he scrolled. Positive for 22q11.2 deletion syndrome. The same condition that had taken Daniel. He sank to the floor, back against the couch, the screen glowing in the dark room. Memories flooded him. Daniel's small hand in his, the hospital corridors, the silence after the funeral, the way he'd buried himself in work to avoid feeling anything at all. His phone rang. Elena. He answered, voice raw. It's confirmed. A long silence. Then, softly. Okay. Okay, he echoed, stunned. Elena, this is serious. Heart defects. Immune issues. Learning delays. It could mean everything. I know, she said. But it also means our child. And I'm not doing this alone. You won't be, he said quickly. I promise. But will you really stay? She asked, voice trembling. Not just for appointments, but for the nights they can't sleep? For the IEP meetings? For the moments when it's hard and ugly and you want to run? He thought of Sophia's crooked shelf. Of Leo watching him hammer it in, then quietly handing him the level without a word. Of Clara standing in the rain, pointing to a single star. Yes, he said, and for the first time he believed it himself. I'll stay. The next morning, he drove to Clara's house before dawn. She answered the door in pajamas, hair tousled, eyes wary. I need to tell them, he said. Leo and Sophia. Before they hear it from somewhere else. She studied him, then stepped aside. They're at the kitchen table. He walked in slowly. They looked up, Sophia with her sketchbook, Leo scrolling on his tablet. Arthur pulled out a chair and Saturday, I got the test results for the baby. Sophia dropped her pencil. Leo froze. It's confirmed, he said gently. The baby has a condition, something that might make things harder. More doctor visits. Maybe extra help in school. But it doesn't change how much they'll be loved. Sophia's eyes filled. Like Uncle Daniel? Arthur nodded, surprised she knew the name. Yes, like him. Leo set down his tablet. Will the baby die young? No, Arthur said firmly. Medicine is better now. People with this condition live full lives. But they need support. And family. Sophia bit her lip. Will you still come to my recital? He reached across the table and took her hand. Every single one. Even if I cry when you play. A tiny smile flickered. Leo leaned forward. What do we do? We learn, Arthur said. Together. You'll be big siblings. That means you get to teach them things. How to tie shoes, how to laugh at bad jokes, how to be brave. Leo considered this. Then, quietly, I'll show them robotics. Sophia added, and I'll draw them pictures. Clara watched from the doorway, tears silently streaming down her face. Later, as Arthur left, she stopped him on the porch. You told them the truth. Without sugarcoating. Without hiding. I'm done hiding, he said. She nodded, then handed him an envelope. Dr. Lin scheduled a joint session, all four of us plus Elena, to talk about how we'll support the baby as a family. He took it, fingers brushing hers. Thank you. For what? For believing I could change. I don't believe it yet, she admitted softly. But I'm starting to hope. He barely slept. Not from anxiety over the meeting, but from the weight of what came after. The anatomy scan was scheduled for next week. The first real look at the child whose life would now intertwine with all of theirs. Inside, the waiting area was quiet. Clara sat on a plush sofa, flipping through a magazine she wasn't reading. Leo leaned against the wall, earbuds in but music off, just pretending. Sophia clutched a small sketchbook, her knee bouncing nervously. Then Elena arrived. She walked in slowly, one hand resting on her belly, the other gripping a folder of medical notes. She wore a soft green dress, her hair pulled back simply. No armor, no performance, just presence. Clara looked up first. Their eyes met. Two women bound by one man's choices, yet standing on the same ground now. Clara gave a small nod. Elena returned it. Arthur stepped forward. You okay? Elena managed a faint smile. Terrified. But here. Dr. Lin greeted them warmly and led them into the session room. A sunlit space with comfortable chairs arranged in a loose circle. No table. No barriers. Today isn't about plans or logistics, she began, sitting cross-legged on a cushion. It's about belonging. How do we make sure every child, born and unborn, feels they have a place in this family? Silence. Then Sophia spoke, voice small but clear. Will the baby know about Uncle Daniel? Arthur's breath caught. He hadn't expected that. Elena turned to him. Who is he? My younger brother, Arthur said, voice thick. He had the same condition. He didn't make it past 4. Elena's eyes filled. I didn't know. You couldn't have, he said gently. I never talked about him. Not even to Clara, really. Clara looked at him, surprised. You never told me how much you loved him. I was ashamed, he admitted. Ashamed I couldn't save him. So I buried it. Leo finally pulled out his earbuds. So, your scared history will repeat itself. Arthur nodded. Every day. But it won't, Leo said firmly. Because you're not alone this time. Elena reached out, not to Arthur, but across the circle to Sophia. Would you draw something for the baby? Something that includes Daniel too. Sophia blinked. Then slowly, she opened her sketchbook and flipped to a new page. Without a word, she began to draw, a family tree, not with names, but with stars. One star labeled Daniel, glowing brightly at the top. Below, for figures holding hands, Leo, Sophia, Arthur, Clara, and a tiny fifth figure, just beginning to form, wrapped in light. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. Dr. Lin let the moment breathe. Then she turned to Clara. What do you need to feel safe in this new chapter? Clara took a long breath. I need to know that when the baby is born, if there are emergencies, if things get hard, you won't disappear from Leo and Sophia's lives again. Arthur didn't hesitate. I'll schedule everything around their routines. School events, therapy, birthdays, they come first. Always. And if the baby needs you in the hospital for weeks? Clara pressed. Then I'll bring Leo and Sophia with me, he said. They'll meet their sibling. They'll be part of it. not outsiders looking in. Leo studied him. You mean that? Yes. A silence settled, not tense but tender. Then Elena spoke, voice trembling. I've been so afraid you'd all resent this baby. That you'd see them as the reason your family broke. Clara shook her head. Our family broke because we stopped talking. This baby didn't cause that. But maybe they can help us rebuild it. Arthur looked around the circle, at his children, at Clara, at Elena. And for the first time, he didn't see separate pieces. He saw a mosaic. Imperfect. Scarred. But whole. As the session ended, they walked out together. Not as exes, not as rivals, but as co-creators of something new. Outside, the sky had cleared. Sunlight poured over the city. Ert hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He'd texted Clara the night before. They're doing the full scan today. Would any of you come? Not expecting a reply. But at 8:45 a.m., her car pulled up beside his. Leo stepped out first, wearing his robotics team hoodie, hands shoved deep in the pockets. Sophia followed, clutching a small stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3. Her bravery bunny, she called it. Clara emerged last, sunglasses hiding her eyes, but her posture was open, not guarded. You came, Arthur said, stunned. We're family, Leo replied simply, as if it were obvious. Elena waited inside, already changed into a hospital gown, sitting on the edge of the exam table, fingers twisting nervously. When she saw them through the glass panel in the door, her breath hitched. Clara knocked gently and entered first. We hope it's okay we're here. Elena's eyes welled. I didn't think. I never imagined you'd want to be part of this. Sophia walked forward without hesitation and placed her bravery bunny on the tray beside the bed. For the baby, she said softly. So they're not scared. Elena covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling over. Thank you. The technician, a kind-eyed woman named Marla, greeted them warmly. We'll do a full structural survey today, heart, brain, limbs, organs. It takes about 45 minutes. You're all welcome to stay. Arthur sat closest to Elena, but Clara pulled chairs for herself and the kids near the monitor. No one spoke as the lights dimmed and the ultrasound probe glided over Elena's abdomen. Then the screen flickered to life. A tiny form appeared, curled in perfect repose, limbs delicate, head tilted slightly. A heartbeat pulsed in steady rhythm across the display. 142 BPM. There's your baby, Marla said gently. Strong heartbeat. Good movement. Sophia leaned forward, eyes wide. They're real. Leo didn't speak, but his shoulders relaxed just a fraction. Marla moved the probe slowly, narrating as she went. Brain structures look typical. Spine is closing properly, stomach bubble present. Kidneys functioning. Then she paused. Her expression didn't change, but her movements became more deliberate. She adjusted the angle, zoomed in. Arthur's stomach dropped. What is it? Marla kept her voice calm. I'm just taking a closer look at the heart. Sometimes with 22q, we see conotruncal defects, like tetralogy of Fallot or interrupted aortic arch. She manipulated the image, rotating it into a 4-chamber view. Silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then softly. There's a small VSD, ventricular septal defect. A hole between the lower chambers. It's common with this syndrome. Many close on their own. Others need monitoring or minor surgery after birth. Elena closed her eyes. Is that bad? It's manageable, Marla assured. We'll refer you to a pediatric cardiologist for a fetal echo next week. But this is very much within the expected range for 22 quetzales. And everything else looks beautifully developed. Relief washed through the room like a tide. Arthur reached for Elena's hand. She took it without hesitation. On the monitor, the baby kicked, suddenly vigorously, as if protesting all the attention. Sophia gasped. Did you see that? They're dancing. Leo actually smiled. More like karate. Even Clara let out a soft laugh, a sound Arthur hadn't heard in years. After the scan, they gathered in the quiet hallway. Elena hugged Sophia first, then Leo, awkward but earnest. Clara stood back, watching, arms crossed, but her eyes were soft. Arthur approached her. Thank you for coming. She looked at him, really looked at him. No walls, no armor. I needed to see it too. Not just the diagnosis. The baby. The person. He nodded. His name is Daniel, he said quietly. Everyone turned. Elena blinked. You've chosen a name? I have, Arthur said, voice thick. After my brother. Not to live in his shadow, but to carry his light forward. Sophia's eyes filled. Like my drawing. Yes, he said, smiling through tears. Exactly like your drawing. Later, as they walked out into the afternoon sun, Leo fell into step beside Arthur. So, Uncle Daniel's namesake. Arthur nodded. If that's okay with you. Leo thought for a moment. Yeah, it's perfect. That evening, Arthur didn't go back to his apartment. At Clara's invitation, he stayed for dinner, just pasta and salad, nothing fancy. They ate at the kitchen table, the same one where he'd once missed birthdays and anniversaries. Now he listened as Sophia described her art project, as Leo debated the ethics of AI and robotics, as Clara told a story about a client who wanted a house shaped like a seashell. And when Daniel's name came up again, spoken easily, naturally, like he already belonged, Arthur didn't flinch. He just passed the bread to Leo, squeezed Sophia's shoulder, and met Clara's gaze across the table. No grand speeches. No promises. Just presence. Because in that ordinary kitchen, under the hum of the refrigerator and the clink of forks, something extraordinary was happening. The VSD was small, likely to close on its own, but recommended delivery at a hospital with a level 4 NICU just in case. That meant planning, coordination, decisions. And with every logistical detail, old fears resurfaced. One rainy Thursday, Arthur sat in Clara's living room, reviewing discharge protocols with Elena over speakerphone while Leo tinkered with a robot on the floor and Sophia read nearby. They want us to pre-register by 36 weeks, Elena said, voice tight, and decide who'll be in the delivery room. Arthur glanced at Clara. I assumed you'd want your sister there. I do, she said. But I also think Leo and Sophia should be able to come meet their brother right away, if everything goes smoothly. Elena exhaled shakily. I'd like that. But what if it doesn't? What if he needs surgery right away? Silence fell. Leo stopped fiddling with his robot. Sophia looked up from her book. Arthur leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Then we handle it together. No one gets left out. Not you. Not them. Not me. Clara studied him. Even if it means missing a board meeting? He didn't flinch. Especially then. Just then, his phone buzzed, a call from his CFO. He silenced it without looking. Leo watched him. You really mean that, don't you? Yes, Arthur said simply. Because I finally understand. Time isn't something you give. It's something you choose to spend. 2 days later, disaster struck, not with the baby, but with Leo. A late-night robotics competition ran long. Arthur had promised to pick him up by 10 p.m., but an emergency investor call, critical to securing funding for a new clean energy initiative, ran over. He texted Leo, running 20 minutes late. Wait inside. At 10:45 p.m., drenched from sudden rain, Arthur pulled up to find Leo standing alone under the school awning, backpack slung over one shoulder, face unreadable. You said 20 minutes, Leo said flatly as Arthur jumped out to open the passenger door. I know. I'm sorry. The call was more important, Leo finished, climbing in without meeting his eyes. The drive home was silent. Rain drummed on the roof. Arthur's chest ached. When they pulled into Clara's driveway, Leo didn't move to get out. You keep saying you've changed, he said quietly. But tonight felt exactly like old times. Arthur turned off the engine. You're right. Leo finally looked at him. So which is it? Are you really here? Or just pretending until it gets hard? The question hung like glass ready to shatter. Arthur took a breath. I failed you tonight. And I hate myself for it. But I won't make excuses. He pulled out his phone, opened his calendar, and deleted the next 3 high-level meetings. Starting now, nothing comes before you. Not deals. Not calls. Not even fear. Leo studied him. Prove it. I will. The next morning, Arthur walked into his corporate headquarters and called an emergency executive session. I'm restructuring my role, he announced to stunned silence. Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO. I'll remain chairman, but day-to-day operations will shift to Elena. Gasps echoed around the table. Elena, his CFO sputtered. She's brilliant, yes, but she's also the mother of my child, Arthur said firmly. And I trust her completely. This isn't emotional. It's necessary. Later that afternoon, he showed up at Clara's house unannounced, holding 2 paper bags. She opened the door, wary. What now? I resigned as CEO. Her eyes widened. You did what? I can't be the father my children need and run a global company, he said. So I chose. Sophia appeared behind Clara, peeking out. Does this mean you'll come to my art show next month? Yes, he said. Front row. And I'll wear the ridiculous hat you made me. Clara crossed her arms, but her lips twitched. You realize this doesn't erase last night. No, he admitted. But it's my first real step toward never repeating it. She held his gaze for a long moment, then stepped aside. Come in. Dinner's almost ready. That night, as they ate at the kitchen table, Arthur, Clara, Leo, Sophia, the air felt different. Lighter. Not because the past was forgotten, but because the future was finally being chosen deliberately together. And when Arthur's phone buzzed with a notification, Elena. Kicks are strong today. He's dancing again. He didn't check it right away. He finished listening to Sophia's story first. Long after the kids were asleep, just to prove he could stay. Then, at 38 weeks, Elena went into labor. It happened fast. Water broke during a routine checkup. By the time Arthur got the call, she was already being prepped for delivery at St. Mary's Level 4 NICU wing. He called Clara immediately. They're inducing now, he said, voice tight with controlled urgency. They want me there. But I told them to wait for you. Clara didn't hesitate. We're on our way. 40 minutes later, they arrived together. Leo in his hoodie, Sophia clutching her Bravery bunny, Clara holding both their hands. The hospital corridor buzzed with quiet efficiency, but to Arthur, time slowed. Every step toward room 412 felt like walking through water. Elena lay propped up in bed, pale but calm, gripping the rails as a contraction rolled through her. When she saw them, tears filled her eyes. You came, she whispered. All of us, Clara said gently, stepping forward. She didn't hug her, boundaries still mattered, but she placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. We're here. The hours unfolded in waves, breathing, pushing, moments of exhaustion pierced by sudden intensity. Arthur stayed at Elena's side, wiping her brow, murmuring encouragement, his CEO composure long gone, replaced by raw, trembling presence. Leo stood near the window, arms crossed, watching everything with quiet intensity. Sophia sat curled in a chair, sketching furiously, her way of processing fear. At 3:17 a.m., a sharp cry split the air, strong, indignant, alive. He's here, the midwife announced, lifting a tiny, squirming body wrapped in a blue blanket. Daniel Arthur Moretti. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. And look, he's already fighting. Arthur's breath caught. He reached for him, hands shaking so badly the nurse steadied his arms. And then there he was. His son. Red-faced, wide-eyed, perfect. Hi, Daniel, Arthur whispered, voice breaking. I'm your dad. He carried him to Elena first. She touched his cheek, tears streaming silently down her temples. He's beautiful. Then, slowly, Arthur turned to the others. Leo stepped forward first. He didn't speak, just stared at his newborn brother. This tiny person who shared his blood, his name, his uncertain future. He's got your nose, Leo finally said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Sophia approached next, eyes huge. Can I hold him? The nurse helped her settle into a chair, placing Daniel carefully in her arms. He blinked up at her, calm suddenly, as if recognizing her from her drawings. I drew you 1,000 times, she whispered. But you're better in real life. Clara watched from a few feet away, arms wrapped around herself. Her expression was unreadable, grief, joy, caution all tangled together. Arthur met her gaze across the room. Come meet him, he said softly. She hesitated, then walked forward. The nurse gently transferred Daniel into her arms. He nestled against her chest, letting out a soft sigh. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, breathing him in, the scent of new skin, of possibility. When she opened them, tears glistened. He feels like hope, she whispered. Arthur's throat tightened. He is. Just then, the neonatologist entered, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Reyes. We'd like to do a quick assessment, she said. Standard for 22Q babies. Heart, oxygen levels, feeding reflex. Everyone tensed. But 20 minutes later, she smiled. He's stable. Oxygen saturation is excellent. Heart murmur is present but mild, consistent with the small VSD we saw. We'll monitor, but no immediate intervention needed. Relief washed over them like warm rain. Later, as dawn painted the sky peach and gold, they gathered in the quiet hush of the postpartum room. Elena slept lightly, exhausted. Daniel lay swaddled in a bassinet between them. Leo leaned against the wall, watching his brother sleep. What happens now? Arthur looked at Clara. We go home. All of us. In shifts. In visits. In shared meals and late-night texts and school pickups. He paused. We build a family that includes everyone. Clara nodded slowly. even when it's messy. Especially then. Sophia yawned, rubbing her eyes. Can I come tomorrow after school? Every day, Arthur promised. As they prepared to leave, Clara lingered by the bassinet. She reached in and gently brushed a finger over Daniel's tiny hand. He curled his fingers around hers instantly. She looked at Arthur, eyes glistening. You stayed. I did, he said. And I'm not leaving. Outside, the city woke beneath a clear morning sky. Leo walked ahead, shoulders lighter than they'd been in years. Sophia skipped beside Clara, chattering about names for Daniel's future dog. Arthur took one last look back through the hospital window. Elena sleeping, Daniel breathing steadily, and felt something settle deep in his chest. Not victory, not redemption, but belonging. Arthur in a panic. Daniel's immune system, weakened by 22Q, couldn't fight off even a common cold. By 1 a.m., they were back in the NICU, this time under harsh fluorescent lights, monitors beeping like warning bells. Arthur paced the hallway, phone pressed to his ear. Clara, I know it's late, but he's been admitted. They're running tests. I don't know how long. On the other end, silence. Then, we're coming. 40 minutes later, Clara pulled up with Leo and Sophia asleep in the back seat. She carried a bag, diapers, bottles, a change of clothes for Arthur, even a thermos of coffee. You didn't have to, he said, voice rough with exhaustion. I know, she replied simply. But you shouldn't be alone. Inside the isolation room, Daniel lay swaddled under warming lights, and 4 in his tiny arm, oxygen sensors on his foot. He looked so small, so vulnerable. Sophia pressed her face to the glass, eyes wide. Is he going to be okay? The doctors say it's treatable, Arthur said, crouching beside her. But his body has to learn how to fight. Leo stood stiffly nearby. This is what you meant. About him needing more. Arthur nodded. Yes. And you'll stay? Leo asked, voice low. Every second. Just then a nurse emerged. He's stable for now, but we need one parent to stay overnight. The other should rest. Elena, pale and trembling, looked at Arthur. I haven't slept in 2 days. He didn't hesitate. Go home. I'll stay. As Elena left, Clara stepped forward. I'll stay too. Arthur blinked. You don't have to. I know, she cut in gently. But your son has 2 families now. And tonight he needs all of us. They settled into the cramped waiting area just outside Daniel's room. Arthur in a plastic chair, Clara on a worn couch, Leo curled against the wall with his hoodie pulled over his head, Sophia tucked under Clara's arm, clutching her bravery bunny. Hours passed in quiet vigil. At 4 a.m., Daniel's oxygen levels dipped slightly. Nurses rushed in. Arthur stood instantly, heart pounding. He's okay, Clara said firmly, placing a hand on his arm. Breathe. He did. And when the nurse gave a thumbs-up minutes later, he sank back down, shaking. Clara handed him the thermos. Drink. He took it, their fingers brushing. No words. Just presence. At dawn, Daniel stabilized. His fever broke. The doctor called it a rough night, but manageable. A preview of the extra care his condition might require. As sunlight filtered through the blinds, Sophia stirred. Can I see him now? The nurse allowed brief contact, gloves, mask, careful hands. Sophia held Daniel's tiny fingers through the incubator port, whispering, You're so brave, little D. Leo watched, then quietly asked the nurse, What can I do to help next time? She smiled. Learn the signs. Be ready. That's everything. Later, as they prepared to leave, Arthur turned to Clara. Thank you for being here. She looked at him, really looked, at the dark circles under his eyes, the stubble on his jaw, the raw fear still clinging to him. You didn't run, she said softly. Not once. I'm learning, he admitted. In the hospital parking lot, rain began to fall again, soft, steady. Leo opened the car door for Sophia, then paused. Will you come to robotics tomorrow? We're testing the new prototype. Arthur nodded. Wouldn't miss it. Clara handed him a dry umbrella from her trunk. Take care of yourself. He needs you strong. I will. As she drove away, Arthur stood in the rain for a moment, watching the taillights disappear. Inside his chest, something had shifted. Not just responsibility, but belonging. He wasn't just Daniel's father. He was Leo's. Sophia's. Even in a strange, new way, Clara's co-guardian of this fragile, expanding family. Back in his apartment that evening, he opened his laptop. Not to check stocks, but to enroll in a parenting course for children with 22 quetzales. As he filled out the form, his phone buzzed. A text from Clara. He slept through the night. Fever gone. You did good. Below it, a photo. Daniel, wrapped in a yellow blanket, sleeping peacefully in Elena's arms. On his chest, taped gently to his onesie, was a new drawing from Sophia. 5 stars this time, all connected by golden lines. Arthur stared at it, tears blurring his vision. Because this wasn't the life he'd planned. But it was the one he'd finally chosen. Attended every pediatric cardiologist appointment, every early intervention session, every school pickup for Leo and Sophia. He'd even started volunteering at the robotics club, not as a sponsor, but as a mentor, soldering circuits alongside teenagers who no longer saw him as a billionaire, but as Leo's dad. But the real change wasn't in what he did, it was in how he was. He listened more than he spoke. He sat through Sophia's piano recitals without checking his watch. He let Leo teach him how to code a simple robot, laughing when it spun in circles instead of moving forward. One rainy Sunday afternoon, they all gathered at Clara's house for Daniel's half-birthday. A small celebration with cupcakes and handmade banners. Elena sat on the couch, Daniel asleep in her arms, while Leo showed Sophia how to build a tiny rover from spare parts. Arthur stood in the kitchen, helping Clara wash dishes, the warm water steaming between them. "You've changed," she said quietly, not looking at him. He rinsed a plate. "I'm trying." "It's more than that," she said, turning to face him. "You're present. Not performing. Just here." He met her gaze. "I finally understand something my therapist said. You can't love people you're using to fill a void. I used to think being a good father meant providing everything. But really, it just means showing up, with your whole self, even when you're scared." Clara studied him, the absence of ego, the quiet steadiness. Daniel's first words were Dada and Lala. Arthur smiled. "Lala," Sophia taught him. "She says it's short for big sister who draws me pictures." Tears pricked his eyes. "She's amazing." "She is," Clara agreed. "And so is Leo. He's talking about studying biomedical engineering now. Says he wants to design assistive tech for kids like Daniel." Arthur's breath caught. "Because of us?" "Because of you," she corrected gently. "Because you stayed. Because you showed him that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when it's hard." Just then, Daniel stirred in Elena's arms, blinking awake. He spotted Arthur and reached out with a gurgle. Arthur dried his hands and walked over, lifting his son gently. Daniel buried his face in his shoulder, tiny fingers gripping his shirt. Elena watched them, eyes soft. "He knows you," she said. "Not just as a provider. As his dad." Later, as the rain eased into a drizzle, Leo approached Arthur on the porch. "There's a university symposium next month on genetic disorders and family systems. Dr. Lin recommended it. Said it might help us understand Daniel's journey better." Arthur nodded. "We'll go. All of us." Leo hesitated. Even Mom. Especially her. That night, after everyone left, Arthur stayed behind to help clean up. As he folded the last tablecloth, Clara stopped him. "You don't have to keep proving yourself," she said softly. "I'm not," he replied. "I'm just living the life I want." She looked at him for a long moment. Then, almost shyly, "Would you stay for dinner tomorrow? Just us. No agenda. No appointments." His heart stuttered. "Yes." The next evening, they sat at her kitchen table. Just the two of them, eating pasta by candlelight, rain tapping the windows. "You know," Clara said, swirling her wine, "I used to dream about this. About us finding our way back, not as lovers, maybe, but as friends. As co-parents who trusted each other. I didn't think I deserved it," Arthur admitted. "You don't," she said honestly. "But you're earning it." He looked down at his hands. No longer the hands of a man who signed billion-dollar deals, but of one who changed diapers, held sick children through the night, built crooked shelves with trembling hope. And in that quiet kitchen, under the soft glow of candlelight, Arthur Moretti realized the truth. Redemption wasn't a grand return. It was 1,000 small choices to stay, to listen, to love without conditions backyard, now strung with fairy lights and dotted with mismatched chairs. It wasn't a birthday party. It was something quieter, deeper, a formal co-parenting agreement signing, mediated by Dr. Lin, to finalize the long-term custody and care structure for all 3 children. Arthur arrived early, carrying Daniel in a soft carrier against his chest. The baby babbled happily, tugging at his father's collar. Leo was already there, adjusting speakers for a playlist Sophia had curated. Gentle piano covers of pop songs, her way of making peace with the instrument she once hated. Clara met Arthur at the gate, holding 2 mugs of tea. "He slept well last night," she said, nodding at Daniel. "First full night in weeks," Arthur replied, shifting the baby gently. "Elena says it's a miracle." "She's coming later," Clara said. After her physical therapy appointment, they sat on the garden bench, steam curling from their mugs into the cool air. No tension, just ease. Dr. Lin arrived shortly after, briefcase in hand, but her demeanor was warm. "This isn't about legalities anymore," she said as they settled around a small table under the maple tree. "It's about commitment. Are you ready to sign a plan that reflects not just schedules but values?" Arthur looked at Clara. "We are." The document was simple: joint legal custody for Leo and Sophia, with primary residence remaining with Clara. Shared physical custody on a flexible, child-centered schedule. Equal involvement in education, health, and emotional milestones. For Daniel, a separate but parallel agreement. Arthur and Elena as primary co-parents, with Leo and Sophia granted official sibling visitation rights and inclusion in all major decisions. Leo read the clause aloud, voice steady. "Siblings shall maintain consistent, nurturing contact, including overnight stays, holiday traditions, and participation in therapeutic and developmental activities." He looked up. "Does this mean I can take Daniel to robotics camp when he's older?" "If he wants to go," Arthur said, smiling. Sophia added, "And I get to teach him how to draw stars." "You already have," Clara said softly, glancing at the fridge inside, where dozens of Sophia's drawings, now featuring 5 figures instead of 4, were proudly displayed. Dr. Lin passed the pens. "Sign only if you believe this reflects your truth, not your past, but your future." Arthur signed first. His hand didn't shake. Then Clara. Her signature was firm, deliberate. Leo and Sophia added their initials beside the sibling clause. Not legally required, but symbolically essential. Just as Dr. Lin closed the folder, Elena arrived, walking slowly down the path, her hair catching the sunlight. She carried a small box wrapped in blue paper. "I brought something," she said, handing it to Daniel, who reached for it with curious hands. Inside was a tiny silver bracelet, engraved with 5 names: Leo, Sophia, Clara, Arthur, Elena. And beneath them, a single word, together. Tears filled Clara's eyes. She looked at Elena. "You included me." "You're his family," Elena said simply. "All of you." Later, as the sun dipped below the trees, they sat together on the grass. No divisions, no sides. Daniel crawled between laps, grabbing Leo's shoelace, then Sophia's sketchbook, then reaching for Arthur's hand. Clara watched, quiet, until Arthur shifted slightly and their shoulders touched. Neither pulled away. That night, after everyone left, Arthur lingered by the gate. Clara walked him out. "You've built something real," she said. "We did," he corrected. "All of us." She nodded, then hesitated. "There's a parent-teacher conference next week. For Daniel's early development screening. They want both households present." "I'll be there," he said. "Front row." She smiled, a real one, warm and unguarded. "Good." As he turned to leave, she called after him. "Arthur?" He stopped. "Thank you for choosing us. Every day." He looked back, Daniel asleep in his arms, the autumn wind rustling the leaves above them. "I didn't choose you," he said softly. "I chose me. The man I wanted to become. And you were already there, waiting for him to show up." Clara's eyes glistened. "He's here." And in that moment, under a sky streaked with twilight, the past didn't vanish, but it no longer held them captive. Because love, true love, wasn't about winning custody. Arthur held a small wooden box, his fingers tracing the engraved name. Daniel James Moretti, 1982 to 1986. His brother. The ghost who had haunted his silence for decades. Clara stood beside him, Leo and Sophia flanking her, Elena holding little Daniel's hand as he toddled toward the water, giggling at the foam. "You don't have to do this," Clara said softly. "I do," Arthur replied. "He deserves to be remembered. Not as a tragedy, but as part of our story. Dr. Lin had suggested it months ago. Ritual as reconciliation. Grief unspoken becomes a wall, she'd said. But shared, it can become a bridge." Now, as the sky blazed orange and pink, Arthur knelt in the sand and opened the box. He didn't speak at first. Just let the wind carry the fine ash toward the sea. Then, quietly, "I was 10 when you died. I promised myself I'd never love anyone that much again, because losing you broke me." He looked at his children. "But I was wrong. Love isn't about avoiding loss. It's about choosing to care anyway. Leo stepped forward, voice steady. Uncle Daniel, I built a robot in your name. It helps kids with motor delays hold pencils. It's called the DJ Gripper. Sophia added, holding up a drawing. A boy with wings launching a rocket into stars. This is you flying. Elena knelt beside Arthur, placing a hand on his shoulder. Our Daniel carries your name and your courage. Clara didn't speak. She simply took Arthur's free hand, lacing her fingers through his, solid and warm. As the last of the ashes drifted into the surf, little Daniel waddled back, sandy and grinning, and tugged at Arthur's sleeve. Dada! Water! Arthur scooped him up, holding him close, tears streaming silently down his face. Yes, buddy. That's the ocean. It's big and beautiful, and it holds all our stories. Later, as they walked back up the dune, Leo fell into step beside Arthur. Do you think he knows? Uncle Daniel? Arthur looked at the horizon, where the sun dipped below the waves. I think he sees us. And he's proud. That night, they shared a simple meal at Clara's house, grilled fish, salad, lemonade. No speeches. Just laughter as Daniel smeared mashed potatoes on Leo's shirt, as Sophia showed Elena how to fold origami stars, as Clara passed Arthur the salt without being asked. After dinner, while the kids played in the living room, Arthur stood at the sink washing dishes. Clara joined him, drying in companionable silence. You've come a long way, she said finally. So have we, he corrected gently. She smiled. Remember that courtroom? When you said you wanted sole custody to protect them. I was protecting myself, he admitted. From regret. From failure. From feeling like I wasn't enough. And now I know I'm not enough alone, he said. But together, we're more than enough. She turned off the faucet and faced him. You're a good father, Arthur. He shook his head. I'm a learning one. Outside, the moon rose over the garden, casting silver light on the porch where 5 pairs of shoes sat by the door. Adults and children, different sizes, same home. And in that quiet house, filled with the sounds of play and shared breath, the past didn't vanish, but it no longer ruled them. Because healing wasn't about erasing mistakes. It was about building something true from the pieces left behind. And as Arthur carried a sleeping Daniel to his crib, kissed Sophia's forehead, and ruffled Leo's hair before leaving, he didn't look back at what he'd lost. He looked ahead, at the fragile, ordinary, extraordinary life they'd chosen together. And for the first time, he knew, love wasn't won in courtrooms. It was grown, in kitchens, on beaches, in hospital rooms, in honest words spoken under.